Hey, everybody, welcome to Tip of the Spear. And as always, we're trying to bring the best voices out there in our society to us to be able to weigh in on the critical issues that are going on in today time period, and also to look at things also from a prophetic standpoint as well. We always want a biblical worldview, but also a prophetic worldview, because it seems like things are marching in a certain direction that the Bible predicts is going to happen, and things keeps accelerating. So anyway, we are privileged to have one of my heroes of the faith, Michele Bachmann. And if you don't know Michele, you should. She holds a degree in political science, law, and taxation. She worked as a tax attorney for the IRS before entering politics. She was elected to the Minnesota State Senate in 2000. She became the first Republican woman from Minnesota in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2006, serving until 2015. She founded the Tea Party Caucus and ran for president in 2012. So she's currently the Dean of Robertson School of Government at Regent University, and she's known for her commitment, obviously, to her Christian faith and her values and educational reform. Michele, thank you so much for taking some time and being with us. Great to have you on the show.
Brandon, it's great to be with you too, my brother. Thank you for having me on the show today.
So to me, you're kind of like one of my heroes. You're a cultural warrior, man. You went into Washington, and that's got to be a hard place to practice your faith and have your values. And you were telling me off air a little bit about what you went through, and we were all seeing this kind of deep state thing, the establishment, or people call it Leviathan, and we've seen them go after Trump. But kind of let everybody know what you experienced with this back when you were in Washington.
Sure. When I was in D.C., I was serving in the United States Congress. For a period of time, I was serving on the Intelligence Committee. During that time, a lot of information was coming out. It was during the Obama years that President Obama, inexplicably difficult to understand, he was placing a number of people who were affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. That's a radical terrorist organization that is outlawed in Egypt, where it was originated. It's outlawed in the United Kingdom. And an affiliate of the Muslim Brotherhood is Hamas. Your listeners are familiar with Hamas.
Sure.
That's like a franchise. It's an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza. So this is a foreign terrorist organization. Our government has designated Hamas as a foreign terrorist organization, and the umbrella organization over Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. So going back to where I began, it's inexplicable that a U.S. president would put into positions of authority in the U.S. government, in sensitive positions, people who are at least sympathetic to or somehow affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood organization. Those people shouldn't have a chance to have a job or get anywhere near a job in the administration. Right. I was very concerned about what I was seeing under the Obama administration. So I wrote a letter to the inspectors general that are supposed to ensure that each agency follows the law within that agency. And I simply asked a question about various items, one of them being there was an aide to the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. And she also had served as a U.S. Senator and, of course, was our former First Lady. Yeah. She had as her chief of staff a woman named Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin her parents ran the largest propaganda organization in the world to advance the conquering religion of Islam.
Wow.
Her parents were the senior editors of this propaganda organization, and Huma Abedin herself had been listed on the masthead as an editor of this propaganda organ for I think about 11 or 12 years. So under U.S. law, Huma Abedin never should have been hired. And so I asked the question of the inspectors general, how did she get a job? Because under federal law, she would be prohibited from holding a job. And here she is chief of staff to the Secretary of State of the United States of America. So I asked that question, and I asked, did she get a waiver? What happened? Well, I never got a response from the inspectors general. Instead, what I got, I became the subject of a national smear campaign. And I think
Wow.
that's what your question is about. This is
Yeah.
what happens to an inconvenient individual who asks too many questions or who
Yeah.
tries to oppose the main agenda. And so I was a subject of a national smear campaign in an attempt to destroy my name and my reputation. And I dropped at least 13 points in my district, meaning when I ran for reelection, I won by the skin of my teeth by less than 1 point. And I was actually up 17 points in the polls before
Wow.
the national smear campaign.
Uh-huh.
But a former or Republican presidential candidate came after me. Republican leaders came after me, and obviously Democrat leaders came after me. They did
Yeah.
everything they could to smear me. I was on every TV show every night as an object of scorn and ridicule and derision, just to make me toxic and to
Yeah.
pull me down. So
Right.
that's what you see. You've seen that. Your viewers have seen that with Donald Trump. They've seen it now with Elon Musk. Anyone
Yes.
that the left hates, they're very good at knowing how to destroy. And I've been through that spanking machine myself at the federal level. So I know what it's like. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's a
Yeah.
very difficult thing to go through. I got death threats. We had to remove our children out of our home at a certain point. These
Wow.
people they are serious on the
Yeah.
other side. And so I went through that myself. We're watching Donald Trump go through it now. Now he's going through lawfare. So
Yes.
this is what happens.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you come into that position and basically you're shining the light on the darkness. It's a biblical principle what you're doing, and I think Trump's doing that as well.
Yes,
And we see
absolutely.
that with Doge, with Elon Musk and
Yes.
shining the light and like, whoa, what's happening here? So speak to this agenda of the darkness, Michele, that you saw, and that it's currently going on. What is the agenda trying to do? Is it trying to destroy the West, trying to destroy Christianity? What is their ultimate objective?
The ultimate objective is to bring down the United States of America, and they've been shockingly effective. I think what we've seen just in the several months that Donald Trump has been in office for his second term, we've seen the covers peeled back
Yeah.
because of the benefit of what Elon Musk is doing. I mean, just think of this for a second. We have the richest man on earth
Yeah.
who's acting as a forensic accountant. So he
Right.
has 100 young geniuses with him,
Yeah.
and they're going through all the books. That's what the inspector generals are supposed to do. That's
Right.
what these agency heads are supposed to do. And instead, it's like, the books are so dusty, you can't even find the key to the room where all the books have been kept. And so here, Elon Musk and his guys have been going through, and they've been telling shocking stories of waste, fraud, abuse, things that we couldn't even imagine. In fact, one night I was so upset. I'd been following it, what Elon Musk had been uncovering. I've been in the belly of the beast. I understand it. I was so upset in my soul about what was happening. I had to go to bed one night. My heart was hurting.
Mm.
Physically, my heart was hurting. And I thought, I've got to calm down. I went to
Yeah.
bed like 8 o'clock at night. I'm a tough cookie.
Yeah.
But I was so shocked because when I saw that the United States has so cursed Israel, we
Yes.
cursed Israel by a $9.6 billion that we had given to Hezbollah and Hamas.
Yeah.
So basically, we financed the terror tunnels with that and so much more money we'd given, but we financed October 7th. We did.
Yes.
We
Yes.
did. And so we have to reconcile that. And so I went to my bed and I cried out to God and just as a proxy, beg God for forgiveness for what the United States of America did just in terms of terrorist financing. We financed that. So
Yes.
that's just one little piece of what Elon Musk has been finding. And of course, the mainstream media won't talk about it. In fact, they're accusing Donald Trump of absurd things. They're accusing Elon Musk of absurd things. They're trying to use the federal judges to shut down this examination that is so
Yes.
long overdue. And we're the suckers. We're the suckers. We've been played. This is our money. Our money. Our government is not a small spender. It's a gigantic spender. And what we need to understand is that at the end of the day, no matter which side of the political aisle you're on, math wins. So just like in your own bank account, if you're severely overdrawn, you will lose your car, you will lose your house, you will go bankrupt. Well, the same is true for nations. And so the United States is way overdrawn. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So this is a very real issue. And it's what's shocking too, Brandon, is how severely under Joe Biden, we all know he didn't even have a clue what was happening under him, but that's why he was the perfect president for the Democrats. That's why Kamala Harris was the perfect candidate for Democrats for president. They didn't have to worry about these two having a clue about what's going on. There's other people behind the scenes who love playing president, and they were president for the purpose of bringing down the United States. Why did they want to destroy the United States? Very simple. There's communist entities, whether it's the Chinese communists, the Russian communists, other communists, they've made no secret of it. Their goal is to destroy the United States because they want to be the king of the hill. They want to be the dominant power in the world. Russia's stated that since the 50s, going back really to 1917. That's their goal. That's the Communist Chinese goal. But it's also the goal of radical Islam. Radical Islam wants to seek the destruction of the United States. The Muslim Brotherhood had a memorandum that was discovered about 20 years ago. And that memorandum laid out how the Islamic world was going to destroy the United States. It was a memorandum of understanding. I studied it when I was on intelligence committee, and they used this language. They said, we will destroy their miserable house from within. In other words, we'll bring down the United States from the inside. They've been wildly successful. And one of their tools for success is Biden's open border. Because President Trump himself has said he thinks it's more like 20 to 21 million came into the United States illegally during Joe Biden's term. I mean, think of that. 20 to 21 million. I live in the state of Minnesota. The entire state is like 5.7 million. 5.7 million. So that would be like the entire population of Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, Montana, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming. It'd be like the entire population of that state has come in under Joe Biden, a number of them extremely dangerous terrorists. We know this. Border Patrol told us extremely dangerous terrorists. Even terrorists on the terror watch list came into the United States. Border Patrol had them. And under Joe Biden, they were released. They weren't held in custody. Known terrorists were released into the United States. So this is the problem we're dealing with. I tell you, we should kiss the ground that God answered our prayers. Not that Donald Trump is a saint, he's not, but we can thank God that he heard our fasting. He honored our fasting. He heard our prayers. He is now president, and under him, the border is closed. But also, he's kicking out as many of these dangerous people as he can. Can he get all 21 million people out and plus many more that came in years prior? I don't know if he can, but he's trying. He's trying. He's doing everything that he can to right the ship. So think of it this way. Think of your house. Think of a band of bandits who come to your house. They knock down the door. They break the windows. They turn all the furniture upside down. They steal anything of value out of their house. They leave. That's America in the last 4 years. That's what happened under Joe Biden. It is so shocking what the bandits who are serving under him did to us. And we're just starting to unfold the damage that they did. The Democrat Party, and I don't say this to be a partisan, they have forsaken any issues, like normal issues, differences between Republicans and Democrats. What we're seeing is that the Democrat Party served one purpose, and it was to get control of the levers of power so they could literally steal us blind. That's all it was. Because
Wow.
isn't it weird? Trillions of dollars are gone. The only people who benefited were Democrats,
Yeah.
Democrat organizations, Democrat allies, Democrat donors. They're the ones who all the money was stolen to benefit them. Nobody
Yes.
went to jail.
Right.
It is so selfish, so criminal, so shocking. You can't make it up. I'm not saying that because I'm a Republican. I'm
Right.
saying it because I'm a human, because
Yes.
I'm a Christian, because I'm a citizen of this country. They stole from my children. They
Yes.
stole from my grandchildren. They stole from me. And
Right.
they need to face justice. Like, for instance, Stacey Abrams, the failed
Oh.
governor candidate
Oh.
in Georgia, she got $2 billion given
Oh.
to some phony nonprofit that she just made up that only had $100 to its name. She's
Oh.
given $2 billion by the Bidenites as they're within months of when they're running out the door. John Podesta, who ran Hillary Clinton's
Yes.
campaign, he was given 375 billion, something in that neighborhood.
Whoa.
We're talking billion here.
Wow.
$375 billion for him to control the distribution of that money. Where do you think that money goes? It went
Oh.
in their pockets.
That's right.
But I'm speculating. My opinion, I don't know that it's true, just an opinion. It's not
Yeah.
your opinion, it's my opinion. I'm
Okay.
not saying it in terms of defamation, I'm saying it in terms of speculation. I would think out of that 375 billion, don't you think maybe Democrat campaigns are being financed
Oh.
out of that
Yeah.
money? I don't think
Totally.
this is a leap. I'm not saying it's true. I'm
Right.
speculating. So this is the kind of evil. They don't even blush anymore over their sins. They don't
Right.
even blush anymore at what they do. So what Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and all these agency heads are exposing, our prayer needs to be, Brandon, from the Church of Jesus Christ. We have this little tiny window of opportunity. What we can do is pray every day. And we
Yeah.
need to pray every day that God will give success to exposing the hidden deeds of darkness, that God will give protection over President Trump, not a saint, not perfect, but protection over him, his family, JD Vance, his family,
Right.
all the people in the cabinet and the government, over Elon Musk, over his business, over all of his associates. These people literally are calling for them to be killed. They're calling
Yes.
for them to be killed and for people to go out and kill them. Here you had a sitting congressman, this congressman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. She
Oh, she
called
said,
for for people to commit violence against Senator Ted Cruz.
yes, I
They're
heard
over
that.
the top now. So anyway, this is where we're at, but it's all a part of the ultimately it's Satan's demonic plan to bring down the United States, to kill, steal, and destroy the United States. Do the same for Israel, because ultimately we know, according to prophecy, the Antichrist will come. There will be a one world government. There
Sure.
is a convergence of events right now that are happening like we've never seen
Yeah.
before in history. This is the most biblical, greatest time to be alive. It's the time that the prophets pointed to, and they long to be alive to
Right.
see the days that we get to see. Just look
Yes.
at Israel. That's all you
Right.
have to, you know, we're right there. Messiah's at the door. Jesus is at the door. So it's the greatest time to advance the kingdom. We should lose any fears about witnessing right now.
Amen.
And I'll tell you, I just want to say to your audience, one of the easiest ways to witness is just to ask someone, could I pray for you? Just ask if you can pray for them.
Yeah.
And most people won't turn you down. And then ask them, how can I pray for you? And they might give you a few things. And in your prayer, you can just explain salvation, and you can pray a salvation prayer over them. Whether they
Amen.
know the Lord or not, just pray a salvation prayer over them and their household. And then that sparks a conversation. And you can say, this is why I wanted to pray for you. You, I'll tell you, it is the greatest time to be alive, but we need to pray about these events
Yes.
because that's why you have your show, to
Yes.
equip the saints so we know what to do. We need to understand the times, and then we need to know what to do. Well, right now, what we need to do is we need to pray. We need to know the truth. Watch a show like Brandon's show. It's the truth. Send it out to everybody you know. Subscribe. Make sure you send it out so that other people, your relatives, your associates at work, so your neighbors, so they can know the truth. This is an open window. There's an open window of time over America, over the world, and we're living in a time of blessing.
Yeah.
And so we need to ask God to utilize every opportunity in advance right now that we have. This is not the time to be idle. It's a great time. We're living in an era of freedom. And so we need to use this freedom for liberty's sake, for the kingdom's sake. And I'm not talking just politics here. I'm
Right.
talking about the kingdom of God. We need to use this liberty. God has given us a political advantage because in our world right now in America, it's amazing the difference. You couldn't have a bigger compare and contrast than the Biden administration and the Trump administration
Totally.
on how they're utilizing power. So just pray and pray
Yeah.
that those that are in authority, they're not perfect. Every single one of them is a flawed, sinful human being.
Sure.
But pray for them. So, like when I see Pete Hegseth on TV, I've known Pete since he was in high school.
Did you?
He's from, we went to the same church together. I knew his
Wow.
mom in Bible study. I knew his dad.
Uh-huh.
So just he's a genuine believer. So pray for him. Pray for Marco Rubio. He's
Yeah.
Catholic, but he knows the Lord. Pray for these different people. When you see the news, don't just consume news. Use
Right.
that to stimulate yourself. Pray for them in that moment. I've been there.
Yeah.
And life goes so fast. It's like when you have your blender sitting on the counter and you hit frappe. That's like how fast the world goes in DC for these
Yeah.
people.
Sure.
They hardly have time to pray, but they need to pray. But they
Yeah.
need us to pray for them so that they
Yeah.
don't slip up and they do the right thing.
Amen. Hey, I know you're a great friend of Israel, as I am, and I want to get your take on what's happening in Israel, the Middle East, Iran, and all those things that are transpiring, because we know as Bible students that Israel's God's timepiece and things are developing. And can you weigh in on what you see, not only from a spiritual standpoint, but a geopolitical standpoint on Israel?
Well, it's a biblical moment for Israel and for Israel's future, where it's going to go. It's literally, think of a teeter-totter. And
Okay.
we've seen the teeter-totter goes up and goes down. And during the Biden years, it was really the worst of times because
Oh,
here
yeah.
Israel was under attack October 7th. That was
Yes.
financed by Iran. And Iran's strategy was to create a circle of nations that would surround Israel completely and then destroy Israel. So all the money, all the weapons had been laid. This was a plan that's been into effect. Well, the Ayatollah wrote a book called "In 25 Years, We Will Annihilate Israel." So the current Ayatollah wrote the book, "In 25 years, we will annihilate the Jewish state." In other words, all Jews will be dead. We don't care if we bomb the entirety of Israel. We just want Jews dead, and we want to conquer Israel. So he wrote that book. That book, let's see, I want to say it was about in 2007, 2009, he wrote that book. And
Okay.
they plan that this is going to happen. So they actually thought, because of Biden and Obama, their time clock advanced significantly. Because remember, Obama gave the Ayatollah $150 billion plus
Yeah.
for their nuclear program. Now,
Right.
an American president did this knowingly, intentionally, because it was the foreign policy of Barack Obama to make Iran a big player. He wanted them empowered. And I sat on the Intelligence Committee. I watched this happen. And then under Joe Biden, the same thing happened. In fact, it was so bad that Kamala Harris, the vice president, gave a speech where my jaw dropped to the floor. She literally gave all of Hamas's talking points and was practically pointing her finger at Netanyahu, telling him,
Wow.
you have to obey Hamas's talking points. In other words, you have to surrender and lose. I've never
Right.
seen anything like it before. The vice president, the presidential candidate on the Democrat ticket, calling on Israel to lose to terrorists. That's where we were.
Yeah.
Today, we're in a completely different place. In these 2 months, we've seen the teeter-totter go from Israel down to now Israel is up. Completely different. So a lot of damage was done in those 4 years. A lot of weapons were built up. And so now Donald Trump and Israel working together. But really, I have to say, more importantly, Brandon, it's the right arm of God doing this. He's working through the U.S. He's working through Israel, but it's really his strong, powerful right arm who he never slumbers nor sleeps. He's the one advancing. So these are still very difficult days for Israel, but Israel supernaturally, only through the power of God, probably degraded Hamas by about 90% of their capacity. They've degraded Hezbollah. So Hamas is in Gaza to Israel's west. To Israel's north is Lebanon, where Hezbollah is located, another foreign terrorist organization. And Israel degraded them by about at least 80% Hezbollah. Then we saw Syria actually have a regime change so that the Iran's the puppet Assad is gone, but now a guy who's maybe worse is running Syria. He is the former head of Al Qaeda, and he is now the president of Syria. And you've got Europe that's giving him over $300 million to prop him up. I mean, this is how insane the world is right now. They just met last week in Belgium or in Brussels for a donor conference. And you had Germany agree to give them millions, and Europe gave together. They gave Syria, the former head of ISIS and Al Qaeda, they gave him over $300 million to establish his murderous regime while he was doing what? Murdering about 20,000 people, whether it's Christians, whether it is Druze, whether it's Yazidis. He was mercilessly killing babies, elderly women, men, anybody who wasn't a Sunni Muslim. He was killing Muslims who are Shia Muslims. So he's killing other Muslims. So this is right on Israel's border. So he was killing them, but God gave favor to Israel. And they, in a miraculous mission, they took out all of Syria's airports, their ports, their shipping ports, their weapons depots. They've been continuing to do that so that this head of ISIS, who hates Israel and who will have a plan to invade Israel from the north and from the east. So Israel's trying to take them out. So, I mean, think of what Israel has to do. Remember these jugglers with these sticks, and they have like plates spinning on all the tops of these sticks. So Israel has like 7 of those sticks with plates on the top. They've had to spin because they've got to defeat Gaza on the east, Lebanon on the north, Syria on the north and the east. They got to watch out for Jordan, who's no big friend of theirs. They got to worry about Iraq, who that's also on their east, but they've got to worry about Yemen as well, coming up from the south. And they've got to worry about Egypt, that's militarized and has broken its treaty with Israel. On every single level, Israel's under attack, and yet God has spared them. We've seen him save them from these missile incursions. This morning, there was a big missile incursion coming up from Yemen again. So, but now what's changed? What's changed that under Donald Trump, now America has gone from cursing Because remember, Genesis 12:3 says you
Right.
can either bless or you can curse. And Joel 3:2 says that all nations will be gathered and the nations will be judged based on how they treated Zion. Well, we've been in a cursing posture for 4 years under the Democrats. Now we're in a blessing posture under Trump. And so now it's a 1-2 punch, 1-2 punch, 1-2 punch. And so we're taking all of the military advantages that we have, we're putting them at Israel's disposal, and everything has completely changed. One of the greatest moments, I was in D.C. when Benjamin Netanyahu was at the White House with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump gave the best press conference I've ever seen in my life. And he said to the press, and Benjamin Netanyahu was standing there. I don't even think he knew Donald Trump was going to say this. When he said, all the Gazans need to leave Gaza. They need to go somewhere else. He was exactly right, 100%. It's the
Right.
only way this thing is going to end, because that land is Israel's land.
Amen.
Israel voluntarily gave authority over that land in 2005
Yes.
to Gaza, the people of Gaza. And Israel said, hey, have a nice life. They even dug up the graves of Jews. They gave all their businesses, their houses. They expelled all the Jews. They said, hey, let's live in peace. So they gave them a state. Well, this is how they were rewarded with genocide. So when you lose a war, which the Gazans, Hamas, they've lost that war. When you lose a war, you lose your expectations. And so now we will see them filter out. Egypt now is finally coming to their senses. They may take up to 700,000. There's maybe 1.7 million there of Gazans. And I think that they'll be leaving and going elsewhere. They need to.
Yes,
they
they
need
do.
to. That needs to be, because they've lost the right. They are committed to killing Jews,
Yes.
and the world cannot expect Israel to sit by and be slaughtered by these animals.
That's
so
right.
we're in a good time. We're in
Yes.
it's a tough time.
Yeah.
And the main thing that has to happen, and this is where I would call on people to pray, the main thing that has to happen is the nuclear program that Iran has to be destroyed. So we need to take out that program, the United States together with Israel, but primarily through the blessing of God. We could take that out, and then the
Yes.
people need to topple the Ayatollah and get a new regime in Iran. That will completely change that region. I think it's entirely possible, but pray into that. Pray, because that's the head of the snake. Ask
Yes.
God to cut the head of the snake off, which is the Ayatollah and this nuclear program, because it doesn't just impact Israel. Because remember the book that I told you about that the Ayatollah wrote, it's not only we're going to annihilate Israel in 25 years, it's that we're going to defeat America. It's since 1979, every day they chant death to America, death to Israel. So this is about our survival too. Nuclear weapons can go around the world.
That's
so
right.
that means whether you're in Kentucky or Florida or Illinois or Oregon, you can be at risk because Iran could launch nuclear weapons that could hit us. Because also, Iran isn't just shooting missiles from Iran. They've also got relationships with Cuba, with Latin America, with South America. And I believe that they've got missiles also here in our hemisphere. So we are also subject to vulnerabilities. So we need to take out all of these programs. I believe we can with the right people, but it has to be done with prayer. It's not just a given.
That's right. That's right. Hey, since we're talking about Israel, I want to talk about another disturbing trend that I'm seeing in our colleges and universities and basically around the world. And of course, you're at the Robertson School of Government and Regent University, so you're on a campus. What is the problem with our colleges and universities with the anti-Semitism, Michele? Where is this coming from? How did this all happen where we have people at Columbia, this Khalil or Mahmoud Khalil, who's leading a charge against Jewish students, pro-Hamas, and we're seeing this in the elite universities. What's happened?
Well, it's all intentional because every university has a mission statement and they have a culture. At Regent University, we were created by Pat Robertson from the 700 Club back in the late 1970s. We've always been a pro-Israel school because we're a Christian school. We're a biblical worldview school, and we've heeded to that mission. In fact, I went to law school there. I was in the very first class in 1979. It was the first biblical worldview law school in the United States of America. And I started the first year. I feel very privileged to have done that. But we're a decidedly Christian school. Now, I'm the dean there. And so we launched a PhD program in government because I saw when I was in Congress, the problem in America, in the Pentagon and the bureaucracy, and is that we don't have PhDs who understand Israel.
Right.
So they come with an anti-Israel perspective. They're anti-Semitic themselves. And you can't even get into a lot of PhD programs if you're pro-Israel. So we started, we have undergrad, we have master's programs, we have PhD program, because we want to train people to understand the right godly perspective on Israel. But then we also started the Israel Institute because we're seeing Christians haven't done a very good job. Churches haven't done a very good job handing the baton from my generation. We understood that we needed to bless Israel, my generation, those who are Christians. But our kids haven't kind of necessarily picked up on that. So the Israel Institute purpose is through digital and website and all the rest. We want to teach this generation what the Bible says, why we support Israel and the geopolitical and everything else that goes along with it. And we want to equip churches. We want churches to know how they can teach their young people how to be pro-Israel. So that's what we're doing. So it's because we're intentional. So what happened to Columbia? What happened to these other schools? Well, that's also intentional, Brandon. It's intentional on part of the chief state funder of terrorism in the world. Who am I talking about? The nation of Qatar.
Yeah.
Qatar is the number one funder of Islamic terrorism in the world. They are not good guys. They are bad guys. They're very, very bad guys. They host Hamas in under their nation. They protect them. And so here you have Hamas trying to kill every Jew in Israel. And yet the leadership of Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, they live in the Four Seasons and Ritz-Carltons in Qatar. So Qatar knows what they're doing because they're funding these rats. They're funding these people. They're funding Hamas. They gave Hamas $1.8 billion. So is Hamas a good guy? No, they are very much a bad guy. And yet, stupidly, under the Biden administration, when October 7th happened, the Biden administration said, hey, Qatar, would you be the negotiator to get the hostages out? Are you flipping kidding me? Are you kidding me? So the heads of Hamas are all living high on the hog in Qatar. And so the Biden administration is saying to Qatar, the chief funder of terrorism in the world, we want you to be the negotiator. Well, that's why we haven't gotten the hostages out. You don't ask the funders of terrorism to get the hostages out. So we're at this point now when over the last few years, we've seen Qatar, they've had free reign on America's college campuses. They spent, Brandon, over $5 billion. This is serious money. They spent over $5 billion on American college campuses buying the love for Islamic terrorism. So global jihad has been paid for, and now they've gone into America's campuses, not just the Harvards, the Yales, the Princetons, the Columbias, but also the University of Minnesota's, the University of this, the University of that. They want to go into Christian campuses. Qatar wants to give money to Christian campuses, and they want to give money to denominations to turn the head so that they can have peaceful dialogue between Islam and Christianity. I am telling you, reject this at your church, reject it in your denomination, because they're trying to give money and have sheep and wolves clothing that want to compromise the church. So that's why seeing the global jihad immediately right after October 7th, you saw the same flags, the same pre-printed scarves, the same clothing, the same signs, the same tents on all these campuses, all courtesy of Qatar. They're paying for it. So I'll tell you one thing I don't like that's happened under the Trump administration. Steve Witkoff, who is the envoy on the Trump administration, who is a good real estate businessman, and he's a friend of Donald Trump's long term. I'm not saying he's an inherently evil man, but he's a compromise man, because he owned a hotel in Manhattan in New York City. It was called the Park Lane Hotel. His partner embezzled and didn't have the money to keep up this project that he had with Steve Witkoff. And so Steve Witkoff did a deal with the Qataris. So the Qataris essentially became a partner with Steve Witkoff, kind of bailed him out on this hotel so he didn't have a bankruptcy problem.
Yeah.
And so now Steve Witkoff is running over to the Qataris and saying, oh, the sheikh is a great guy. These are wonderful people. He's honest. We can trust these people. No, we can't. We can't trust them. These people are the biggest funder of terrorism on college campuses in America, and they're the biggest funder of all the countries around Israel to destroy Israel. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing. So my hope is that the Trump administration will figure this out when it comes to dealing once and all for all with these nations.
Yes.
We can't see these as good guys, because even though some people might think Saudi Arabia is a good guy, or the United Arab Emirates is a good guy, or we've got about 5 nations now that are in the Abraham Accords who want to do trade with Israel, and maybe Saudi Arabia will join them. Well, you don't do it at the expense of Israel. So what we need to understand is, bottom line, this is a religious war. We're all told, oh, don't say that. When I was in Congress, we were all told, never say this is a religious war. That'd be a terrible thing to say. Well, when you step back, what is this?
Yeah,
this is a religious war, because look at all the bombings. Look at what's happening in Europe. It's all Islamic jihad terrorism. And what's it based on? It's based on the Quran. It's how they read the Quran, how they view the Quran. That's a religious war. Who are they trying to kill, steal, and destroy? They're trying to kill Christians, atheists, anybody who's not them, even other Muslims who don't share their view of the Quran. That is Saudi Arabia. That's the United Arab Emirates. That's all of them. So I'm not saying hate these people. God doesn't hate them. God wants them saved. We don't hate them. But we need to know who our enemies are. Sun Tzu, when he wrote The Art of War, he said, you got to know who you are. You got to know your own identity, but you've got to know who your enemy is. And that's why Islam has been so successful in America, in Europe, around the world, because all of these chief negotiators, all of these PhDs, they've all been told, oh, it's not a religious war, because, really, Islam is a religion of peace. Really, Islam is tolerance. There's nothing about tolerance in Islam. Nothing. There might be good Muslims, nice Muslims, but I'm telling you, this is a religion that seeks to conquer and dominate, and they're doing it right now. And I'll tell you, I'm from Minnesota. We're a very Muslim-dominated state now, because Bill Clinton let in all of these Somalis into Minnesota. They're here to conquer. That's their goal. And also, and I'll give you 2 examples how I know this to be true. In Minneapolis, they pushed CARE, the Council on Arab Islamic Relations. That's a Muslim Brotherhood organization. They pushed the Minneapolis City Council and the mayor, and Minneapolis is the only city in the United States that allows, major metropolitan city, that allows the Muslim call to prayer to be sounded out of speakers in the city.
Wow.
And they do it before sunrise, after sunset. I mean, it's evil, absolutely evil. And the city council agreed to it. That's a form of conquering, because the Muslim view is we've just conquered Minneapolis. We've dominated because this call to demonic activity, that's what it is, demonic prayer. Because remember, the Bible says in the first commandment, there is only one God.
Yeah.
There is only one God, and we only worship one God. So
Right.
Allah is not the God of the Bible.
That's
This is
right.
a false God, which
That's
means
right.
it's a demonic God. That's
That's
what the
right.
Bible says. So
Amen.
there's worship to a demonic God 5 times a day, broadcast from speakers in Minneapolis. This is a
Wow.
serious, serious offense. The second thing I'll give you is this
Sure.
is a fraud-based culture because under their reading of the Quran, they're allowed to commit fraud against anybody who's not a Muslim.
Right.
And so the largest fraud in America under COVID, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars were committed by Somali Muslims who committed fraud. They stole hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're just now in their court trial in Minnesota. Hardly anybody has gone to jail for this thing, and they've stolen hundreds of millions of dollars. Our attorney general in Minnesota is a Muslim,
No,
Keith Ellison. I
Keith
served
Ellison,
with
yeah.
him in Congress.
Yeah.
So he looked the other way. He didn't do anything about this fraud. Everybody knew it had happened, did absolutely nothing until the U.S. attorney came in and finally did something. So those are two examples of conquering through fraud,
Yeah.
conquering through stealing. They don't see this as a sin. They don't even see it as breaking the law. It's what can I get away with? The Quran says steal from everybody. If you're a
Wow.
Muslim, that's how you conquer. And then the other one is that I talked about was this Muslim cult. Those are just two examples
Yeah.
that I can give you.
Wow. Wow. Well, so let me bring this into a landing. What I have noticed, and because all the information you're bringing is fantastic, but the churches seem to be failing in communicating this. And I don't know what's going on with the churches in America, but pastors and churches are not at the forefront of this. Yes, there are good churches and that are talking about the current events, talking about what's going on. Michele, what's your opinion of why the church in America, at least, is committing the sin of silence about all this stuff?
Well, I think first of all, they're afraid. There's a great book I want to recommend to everyone called Well Versed. I think now the new updated version is called Reversed. It's by Pastor Jim Garlow. And he found from George Barna, who does all the polling data, that the people in the pews, 90% of the people in the pews want their pastor to talk about these issues.
Okay.
But 90% of the pastors are afraid to talk about the issue because they don't necessarily understand what the Bible says about the issue. And so Pastor Garlow's book takes a lot of different issues like Islam, like taxes, like immigration. And then he lays out what the Bible says about the issue. He wanted to equip the saints, but he wanted to equip the pastors so they'd start speaking about these issues from the pulpit. So it's Pastor James Garlow, Jim Garlow, Garlow. And the new version is called Reversed. The older version is Well Versed. So you can just go look it up on Amazon or somewhere and you can buy it. So there's that reason that pastors maybe would like to preach, but they don't know what it says. It's too complicated to understand it all. And so this is a way to understand it. But I think the other part of it is you've got church boards. A lot of churches are big churches. They don't want to turn people away. They got to pay their staff. They've got to pay their buildings. And they want to be wise. And also, pastors can't act alone. They've got church boards they have to answer to. So, for anyone who serves on a church board, support your pastor. Tell your pastor, we want you to do this. For instance, I went to my church board because we're a big Islamic area in Minnesota. And I told him I'd met a Muslim fellow who had come to Jesus Christ, and his ministry was to try and equip churches so that they would know what was going on. His name was Mark Christensen. I think that was his name, Mark Christensen. He was
Okay.
from Nebraska, maybe either Lincoln or Omaha, Nebraska, and that was his ministry. Well, I explained everything, and my church even sounded interested. Like I said, he could do a 10-part series, like a Bible study or something. But
Yeah.
then it never went anywhere. It shut down. And it's because people within the hierarchy felt we've got a good thing going. We don't want to rock the boat. And also in Minnesota, we don't want to make ourselves a target so that people might come in and want to shoot up the congregation, or,
Yeah.
people have fear. And
Sure.
Islamic terrorists are everywhere. So I
Yeah.
understand it. But imagine if every church did. If
Yeah.
every church did start preaching and explaining, I mean, just on the basis of teaching your congregation about the first commandment,
Yeah.
what the first commandment about says that, I am the
Right.
Lord your God, worship me and me alone, and
Yeah.
explain, here's the false gods.
Yeah.
Because I remember back in like the 90s, there was a guy named Ron Carlson from Minnesota. His ministry would go all over the United States, and he would teach about cults. He would
Yep.
teach about Mormonism and Jehovah Witnesses, and he'd teach about Islam. And he would be welcomed into evangelical churches all over America just for the purpose of educating congregations. Well,
Right.
we're in a completely different era where it's like politically correct, and the church has shut its door to things that are relevant. And I think that may explain in part, Brandon, why the church has lost young people and
Yes.
why it's lost other people, and they're shrinking because they aren't relevant. I mean, talk about what's relevant. What's in the
Right.
news every day? Israel.
Right.
Be relevant to your congregation. Explain these things that are happening. That's biblical. But a lot of pastors and board members have gotten the false idea that, well, we're just going to preach the gospel. So then
Yes.
we're a little bit more righteous than everybody else because we
Right.
just preach the gospel. Well, you can chew gum and walk at the same time. You
That's
can
right.
preach the gospel. And what are you going to do? Give the salvation every week? You're going to
I
give the
know.
same message?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
you can bring salvation into every message.
Sure.
But the Bible, that's what I love about Regent. Regent is a biblical worldview university. We talk about every area of life because the
That's right.
Bible has something to say about every area of life, about
Amen.
government, about law, about business, about every single area. Well, the church, I mean, you never run out of sermon topics
Right.
because every day of the week something's happening, but the Bible has something to say about it. And
That's
you're
right.
going to energize your young people like nothing else. Why do you think these young lads who go out and kill people in the name of Islam, why do they do it? Because their imams on Fridays aren't afraid to say at the mosque. They go out and they wind up all these young men. You want to be fervent in your faith? Then you go out and you commit jihad, and I mean, to the point of suicide vests, suicide bombers. So many were killed on October 7th, but for them, death meant glory.
Yeah.
It meant that they're a death worshiping cult, and so the mothers raise their Islamic children to believe the greatest thing you can do is you can kill other people in the name of their false demonic god, because then you'll have 72 virgins and you'll go to heaven, and you can take a couple of us with you. Islam is a religion where the only way you can guarantee that you go to heaven is if you kill non-believers. What kind
That's
of a
right.
sick satanic religion is that?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that, I think that's in part, Brandon, to explain
Yes.
why pastors aren't taking up this challenge.
Well, that is excellent, Michelle. You hit the nail on the head. That is exactly what's going on. And it takes people like yourself and other folks out there in the Christian world that's leaning in on this. And I hope more believers will be able to have the guts and the strength to be able to speak the truth like you do. I got to be sensitive to your time. I know you're on the run, and so I got to bring this to a close. But Michelle, you're like one of our heroes, man. You are out there on the edge, man. You are on the front lines, and you're doing great work. And so we appreciate all that you're doing. Is there any way people can follow you, or
Sure.
is there a website that you have, or anything like that?
Sure. I'm at Regent University. It's Regent. And you can just type in my name, Michele Bachmann, or M. Bachmann. If you want Bachmann, it has two N's, Bachmann, at regent.edu. And you can email me, and you can just look me up just go to Regent University, regent.edu, and just type my name in the search bar. You'll get to me. So I don't personally do social media myself. I don't
Okay.
do it. We do it for the university. I just don't personally do it. I'm too old, but but people can certainly reach me through Regent University.
Okay. Well, with that kind of information, you are definitely blessing people, and I just want to make sure people that know about you and are able to hear you, because you have a wealth of information, and I think it blesses the body of Christ. And so just keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, God bless you. Thanks for coming on. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and continue to watch us. And remember what the Lord said: when you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.